rebuilding. The catastrophic failure, a new start. Physically, mentally, our careers, our businesses. Step back, first step, next step. The driver in me just wants to get it done tomorrow. We'll do this, do that, let's move this, where are we at with this? You build some confidence, build some self-esteem, start to feel better about yourself. The Silverback Blueprint Podcast, a show for men over 40 who focus on getting stronger, staying motivated, building discipline, creating a community, and becoming truly happy. Hey guys, and welcome to episode 14 of the Silverback Blueprint Podcast. What I read. So we talked a couple episodes earlier about podcasting, trying to do things differently, and then Luke and I were discussing about someone had asked me what I read and stuff, and I was saying, I was worried that podcasting, there's a lot of podcasts out there. Our goal is to, do really good in our genre to help men over 40 and be an inspiration, motivation, and a source of content and knowledge. But I always, I'm like, wow, has it been done to death before? A million people have talked about the books they read. But as Luke pointed out, is that people want to know, if they're listening to you, they want to know stuff about you and what you're reading and stuff. So, that's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about what I read, what some of my favorite books are, and what I'm currently reading, and then a little bit how I structure how and when I read and how that makes a big difference overall. So as far as some of the books that I've read, and I've read a lot of books, and I tried to read more, it does make a huge difference. It really does. If you don't like reading, you can get books on tape and that kind of stuff, so whatever. But to me, the whole art form of reading is super important, and just the physicality and sitting with the book and taking the time to do it. I just find, again, the mind will absorb differently. You create a better environment. If you're listening to it in the car and you're driving to work and then you get derailed because of traffic and stuff like that, I think you miss some of the content. Now, at the end of the day, I'll do this if I'm driving on a real far distance to Toronto or whatever, or I'm going somewhere by myself like that, I'll listen to a podcast, but I would listen to a book on tape. If anyone don't, young guys don't know what that's all about, but I would download a book to listen to it because you're in the car and sometimes it helps you stay focused and awake and stuff. So there I could see it really being a benefit. But I just, the whole physical act of reading and setting it up, I think is super critical, especially, when we're caught up in just being busy and I don't have time for things and stuff. And, again, this is about making things a priority. When I hear someone say that they don't have time to do something positive, what I really hear is it's not a priority for me, or I haven't made it a priority. Right? We'll do a whole thing on priorities down the line and stuff. But my favorite line when guys tell me they don't have time to do things, I'll remind them when they talk about, they don't have time and how really it's not a big enough priority. I'll always go back to that first girlfriend they had. And you know what? We would have or probably did drive for 3 hours one way just to see that special someone for 30 or 40 minutes, that kind of thing, and then drive all the way back because it was a priority. It was super important, right? We didn't give a shit if we got back at 4 a.m, slept for an hour, got up and went to work the next day. It was worth it, right? Because we were highly motivated to do that. It's the same thing. You have to become highly motivated and structure things so that they become a priority and that you see the value of what you're about to add to your life, how it's important for you overall. So reading is definitely one of those overall. So for me, I've read a lot of books. Someone asked me, what are the ones that stand out the most for me overall? One of the first ones, and it's a classic by Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. It just talks about, setting up your mindset and how to, get yourself going. And it's just a good little read. It was written in the 1930s, but a lot of the things in there still hold true to today. And it just gets you going. If you're in business and you're trying to really, systemize things and make things run smoother and stuff and be more efficient, The E-Myth by Micheal Gerber. I think now there's E-Myth Revisited, so he's built up on that. But he just talks about how to systemize things, to make things work and make sense and be more purposeful in what you do, and then be consistent with them. Super, super important. And it doesn't matter if you've got a small business making cupcakes. If you treat it like a franchise or a business like that, here's the steps I do every morning. I do this, this, and this. At 2 p.m, I do this, this, and this. If you take the time to lay those things out and run it that way, it becomes much more efficient. And then you can find ways to improve a lot quicker. And then basically you can get a lot more done with a lot less effort overall. So really powerful overall that way. So again, sticks with me all the time. And I'll go back and reread those books every once in a while. Another cool one, I've got a couple of them here. Show the camera. 3 Feet from Gold. It's written through a couple of people that are part of the Napoleon Hill Think and Grow Rich Foundation. And it just, the biggest message I got about 3 Feet from Gold is persevering and not quitting too soon. Too many people quit just before they struck it rich, or just before they got that break. If they would have just hung on a little longer and persevered, that's really what stopped them from making the success and achieving the things they want to do. So basically the analogy of someone digging for gold and they stopped 3 feet before they actually hit a huge vein, and someone else came along and took up from that same spot, and 3 feet later, they strike it rich, right? That kind of thing. The other person had done all the hard work. This other person came in and just said, hey, I'm interested, I want to try it. And they just were determined to do it, and boom, 3 feet later, they're in it. So consistency, perseverance, super important, right? And just, getting through things. That's, showing up and being there is 95% of the battle sometimes overall. So really good read. Well done. Another good one, again, from Napoleon Hill, called Outwitting the Devil. And this is actually a pretty cool story. So the whole book is basically Napoleon Hill sits down and interviews the devil, and basically like sort of a police investigation and being, interviewed and, trying to crack the case or whatever. Again, written in 1938, but really interesting. It wasn't actually published, until 72 years later, so into the 2000s. And at the time, Napoleon Hill felt that how he was writing it, what he was writing it about, was too controversial for the time. So in the 30s, in the 40s and stuff like that, claiming to sit down with the devil, and that kind of thing, really, really, wouldn't have sat well with a lot of people, or so he felt. And a lot of the things that come out of it, his thoughts about education and people and that kind of stuff, was way ahead of its time. And a lot of what's in there, when you think about it and go through it, you're like, it holds through till today. And some things even more so. So really cool that way. And done in a cool style, written in that whole 1930s verbiage and stuff like that. So it's a little bit different overall. And they'll use words that you kind of have to look up sometimes if you're not sure. If you're like me, you have to look up a lot of words. But just to get the real gist of it. And I recommend that anytime you read. If you run into a word you really don't know what it means, stop. Go to your computer, your Google, whatever, look it up, because that one word was used for a reason, and it can really change the meaning of that sentence, that paragraph, that thought overall. So, I take your time, read properly, and get into that kind of stuff, right? It's not natural for a lot of people to read, or you haven't read in a long time. So it takes a little getting used to, again, building some of those fundamentals and stuff like that and those rituals, but it pays off. So pretty cool, Outwitting the Devil. So those are like some of my more favorite ones I've read. Currently, I'm reading Richard Branson, Like a Virgin. Richard Branson, the Virgin brand. So everything from started with music back in the 60s and stuff like that to now he's into everything, right? Billionaire, hundreds of companies and stuff. So really cool. I always want to see how other people did it and stuff. Quick, easy reads. I like the chapters are small and quick and stuff, and he does it on purpose so that you can get a couple of chapters in and then, not feel that you had to read 100 pages just to get a thought. So pretty good today for, our limited attention spans. And what I think there's a stat out there is that I think the average human attention span right now, especially because of devices and stuff, is like 8 seconds, and a goldfish is 8.2. So the goldfish right now currently have a longer attention span than we do. So that's a bit of a concern overall. So good read. I'm about halfway through it, that kind of thing. And then I always try to read something that when I'm working on something specific. So, right now we're working the podcast. I want to build that platform. I want to be able to spread what we're doing and spread that message and help and be out there and reach guys over 40. So obviously how we do the podcast is important, but how we also set things up on the internet and get better at doing that, everything from social media to building a list and just the technical intricacies of building a more prolific platform on the internet so people can find you and you can be heard. I'm reading this right now by Russell Brunson called expert secrets, and it's really about how to position yourself as being knowledgeable in the niche that you're in. You can be an expert by just being one paragraph ahead of the person you're helping. But for me, after all these years in fitness and in conditioning and strength, and really that my personal journey of improving and always improving, I know there's a lot of content out there that I can share and help other guys along the way. And then again, that's motivating for me. It makes me a little more accountable, that kind of thing. So I really like it. But again, it's about sitting down and figuring stuff out and just getting a little bit better at doing it, right? So it's about breaking it down and, looking at other ways that I can get better at what I'm doing. No one's born with all the knowledge, right? Everyone's learned something from someone, right? That kind of thing. You can be the guy who invented something, which is, that's pretty cool. Or you can be the guy that was taught by the guy who invented something, right? Everyone goes to school, they get a degree in something. They didn't invent any of the knowledge that they have and stuff, but I mean, they're learning, and how they apply themselves and how they work it determines how well they learn that material. But if they can't communicate it and they can't use it and, that kind of thing, they can't put it into action, then that knowledge is trapped. And, I think everyone has a duty to share their knowledge. Someone out there is going to be helped by what can be motivated by what and it's very fulfilling as well. But again, I think, and that's one thing they'd say is that you actually owe it to society. If you have something positive, a positive message, and you have some knowledge to help people do that, you owe it to put it out there and to help people and stuff, right? So really cool. And, I might have one or two books on the go, depending on, where my interest is at and stuff. And that's okay too, as well. The other thing too is about, when I read. Reading for me is something that's going to be hard to do at 2:00 in the afternoon if I'm at the gym or if I'm working on something or I'm just busy dealing with someone face to face, which is super important. I love walking into a convenience store and the clerk behind the counter sitting there reading a book and stuff. I mean, it's just silly. I mean, they're there to work. That's one thing. But number two, how much absorption can they get reading something in a place where there's so many interruptions and stuff like that? So, I think that's futile. So for me, reading is about setting up the right time, finding the right place. So in the morning, I have the rituals and I do my journaling, but in part of that, there's a section where I break things into 10-minute increments. And one of them, the second last one, is reading, where I'll set a timer and I'll pick up where I left off. I often write down the last page I read in my journal so I can see where it is and, fold the page and set the timer and just begin reading and read through for that first 10 minutes. Now, sometimes if I'm really into it and I really like what I'm reading and I might read longer, but at a minimum, I spend 10 minutes. And it's good too. And I do it just before I get to the actual writing, journaling part of my morning, because sometimes, that reading will bring something up that I want, that just, hey, that's something I should talk about. That's something I should write about. That's in my head. I really like how that, so I get a chance to even mull that information over a bit more and put it somewhere where, down to paper. So it becomes a little more real and it becomes a little more ingrained in your mind. And again, all part of setting the environment for your mindset, structuring how we start the day and going forward. And you know what? It's been proven over and over again that the more you read, the more you achieve, and the more you learn, the more you grow. The people that, are at the highest levels of whatever they're doing, 90% of the time are voracious readers. I know some guys, I listen to their podcasts or I watch their videos and, they'll read 30, 40, 50, 100 books a year. And you know what? They'll all say the same thing. It's one of the single most empowering things that once they started doing to that level, made a huge difference in their progress, in their knowledge base, and just how they're achieving their goals and stuff. So, it might not feel, just like journaling might not feel normal at first. It might feel rather awkward. Set the timer, get it going. And you might not make 10 minutes the first couple of times if you're really not used to it and stuff. However, like anything else, work at it and get better at it. Become committed to it so that setting something, I'm going to do this and do it twice and say, fuck it, it's not working. You didn't work it. You never gave it a fair shot, right? So like anything else, set it up. So in my office here, I've got a lazy boy that I'll go over and I'll read and spend the 10 minutes. Sometimes I'll sit at the desk and read it, but if I find I'm getting into it, I'll go in the lazy boy and I'll sit down and it's quiet in my office. I might have some background music going and stuff, setting the stage so that it really magnifies and maximizes the time that I'm spending doing that. And again, 10 minutes every day, you start pounding through books. And sometimes doing it in smaller chunks like that, you have a chance to, like I said earlier, take that information in and, just let it sink in there and let it, let your mind go where it goes with it and stuff like that. So you get a chance to really, just benefit from it, because you're sitting there saying, hey, I'm going to read today and I'm going to pound out this whole book for the sake of pounding it. It doesn't, I don't find you get as much from it unless you truly are, like I said, you're just, you're held by something that you want to finish. I don't read a lot of nonfiction. I used to. I grew up reading Stephen King and all those crazy things and stuff like that. That's one of the reasons why I like horror so much. But it just, grew up on the farm. You had 2 channels. You read. So, I mean, that's just was natural for me that way. But no, I can't remember the last time I read a nonfiction book. A fiction book. I should say that the other way around. And there's nothing wrong with it. If you love fiction, read fiction. But again, if you're looking to improve and make some changes, find something on the subject, recommendations, different things, and read on it, right? There's in my library over across the room, I probably got 50, 60, 100 books. I bring a bunch of them back to the used book market and stuff. There's nothing like buying a book for $28 and then, getting $1 for it and watching them sell it for 5 or 6 later on. That's just the way those things go and stuff. But at the end of the day, super powerful, really important to do. And once you start doing it, you'll see a big difference overall. So, yeah, that's about what I have to say about reading, what I like to read, what I've read, and how I do it. If you have any questions or comments, like I said, kurthaas@gmail.com. But please subscribe to us on iTunes so it's you can be notified every time we release a world-changing, life-altering podcast. And give us a 5-star rating. It helps us get noticed and moves us up on the charts and stuff and lets people find us, right? So it just furthers us in finding guys out there that we can help and, help them share our journey and improve their lives as well, too. So, guys, thanks a lot for listening, and I'll talk to you later.